the Keystone Sports Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Keystone Kickoff Show. I am Jim Galante along with Shaun Gold for Shauns Take. This is where Shaun will give us his picks for the weekend. Shaun, you already dubbed this weekend Redemption Weekend. Not a good time last week, was it?
No, it wasn't. We had a lot of teams let us down in big ways. None more than Maryland, who took Ohio State to halftime at 10-10 and had a complete second half meltdown. So 1-4, that's the inverse of what I was hoping for. So it is redemption weekend now.
Yep, let's put that one behind us. It was a tough week. And the Maryland game, as you said, that one really let me down too. I thought, hey, there's one in Shaun's column, even come halftime. But Maryland will do Maryland. And that's what happened in that second half. Let's look forward to this weekend, though, because we got a lot of really good games on the slate this weekend to get to. One of them that's not going to be one of those great games is Penn State UMass, but we got to talk about the Nittany Lions. Shaun, it was obvious this one was going to be a big number, and it started out. I first saw it at 42.5. I saw it go to 43, then drop to 41.5 points. My theory had been if we look at the weather, it's not going to be very good. There's going to be rain and a bit sloppy, that might keep the score down a little bit. Penn State is undefeated against the spread, which I am very happy to say. I want to know, should I keep riding that train or not?
Well, that's a great question because 41.5 points is no joke. And like you said, the weather's going to be a factor. We're going to have some rain in Happy Valley. Honestly, I think that benefits Penn State more than it benefits UMass. I expect Penn State will still be able to throw the ball around a little bit, but they're definitely going to look to get things going early and often on the ground. Ground and pound, we're going to see a bit of that. The biggest concern about ground and pound is what it does to the clock. It just chews that clock up slowly. So I expect to see a bunch of long drives that we've seen from Penn State all season long. And that's a little concerning in a game where you have to cover by 41.5 points. Winning by 42 points is not easy on any given day. But in the rain, when you're going to run the ball, that is tough. Defensively for Penn State, we're expecting to continue to see great things. They're second in the country in stop rate, and they shut out Iowa early at home this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they get a second shutout this week. So while I'm nervous about all these points, I think Penn State can do it. I'd like to see a couple long touchdowns from them to save some clock. But at the end of the day, James Franklin, he has showed us he knows what the spread is, and he likes to reward people who support Penn State with the spread. So we're going to roll with Penn State. Minus 41.5. It's big, but it's doable.
I've been going with Penn State all year, fortunately. And I knew going into this game it would be an ugly high number. And it made me tentative, but I think you hit it. UMass is going to be so outmatched, even when Penn State brings in that second team, even the third team players, they are going to be better than what UMass has out there on the field. And I do believe there's been so much talk about this lack of big plays. I think we will see some of those both in the passing game and the running game, Shaun. I can't get off the Penn State train. I just can't. They've been so good to me. And I'm not usually one who says ride a streak because I feel like each week is an independent process. And the people who set those spreads, they start reacting when you win every week. But I'm sorry, I just can't get off the Nittany Lion train. So that's the way I'm going to go also. Probably the game I'm most anxious to see, Shaun, is Oregon at Washington. Two top 10 teams. This is from the Pac-12. Both have been so impressive all year. And we talked about this a little bit before we came on the air. Washington is the home team, and it's a 3-point spread. So it seems like Vegas is just saying, hey, these two teams are evenly matched. We're going to give Washington the 3-point advantage because they're at home.
Oh boy, there are a lot of good games this week. But like you said, there is none better than this game. I would like to say, too, this game has the highest point total out of all the top 25 teams. Over-under is set at 67.5 points. That is not a normal number to see in these type of games. So heading into this week, Oregon averages the second most points per game in the country. Washington is third in points per game in the country. We know how good these two offenses are, so I'm going to talk about the defenses because that is where this game is going to be won and lost. Oregon's defense is a little bit better on paper. Their secondary has held up extremely well, allowing 153 yards per game through the air, compared to Washington allowing 243 passing yards per game. In the run department, they're pretty similar. Oregon allows 102 yards on the ground. Washington allows 121 yards. What I think the biggest difference, though, between these two teams, and my biggest defensive indicator for this game, is third down percentage. Oregon is 10% better than Washington on defensive third down stops. In this game, if you can force punts, you are setting yourself up for victory, and Oregon has done that better than Washington so far this year. Now, I will say too, all of these pro-Oregon defensive numbers could go right out the window when you play Michael Penix in this Washington offense. They have not faced an opponent like this. There is no opponent like this in the entire country. But I do think it is a good sign for Oregon that they are better defensively so far. And I got to say, I do think their defense is going to hold up better than some people expected against Washington, and that's why I'm going with Oregon +3 in this game.
All right. It's Oregon you have. That's one, boy, I'm afraid of that game. I like both teams a lot. And if I had to pick, gun to my head, I'd probably go with Michael Penix. I'm very impressed with him. But boy, Oregon's been so impressive also. Probably the bottom line is I'm going to stay away from that game. Let's go on to USC at Notre Dame. This is interesting because Notre Dame, their schedule the last several weeks that they went from Ohio State to Duke, and now it's USC. A tough schedule. It is at Notre Dame, and they are a 2.5-point favorite. And it's interesting. USC is one. You talked about the over/under for Oregon, Washington. USC puts up lots of points. Its defense allows a lot of points. That over/under is also pretty high at 62.5 points.
Well, the past 2 weeks for USC have been very scary. They almost blew that big lead to Colorado, and it took double overtime for them to beat Arizona. So despite Notre Dame losing to Louisville last week, the Trojan defense is a big enough concern for Vegas that they made Notre Dame the favorite in this game despite USC being ranked higher. I think people are expecting Notre Dame to win this game as well. I feel like that's where the public perception is right now because of USC's struggles on defense. But I personally have to question the Notre Dame offense. In the past 3 weeks, Notre Dame has struggled. They scored 14 against Ohio State, 21 against Duke, and 20 against Louisville. Those are not numbers that a top-ranked team in the country should be putting up. That's been underwhelming to me. So I'm not terribly concerned for USC's defense here. I think a lot of people are much more concerned than I am there. What I am concerned about, though, is Notre Dame's defense because Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley are coming to town. If you're letting up 33 points to Louisville, you're in trouble against the Trojans who have the number one scoring offense in the entire country. I guarantee we're going to see some play calls from Lincoln Riley that we haven't seen all season long because he's been holding them in his back pocket for this Notre Dame game. So I'm expecting a great game plan from USC on Saturday night, and I will take the Trojans +2.5.
You know what? That's what I'm with you on. I think Notre Dame has shown they can't put up a lot of points, and USC is going to score a lot of points no matter who they're playing. So that one will be interesting. I'm with you on that one, USC. Here's one that's interesting, Shaun, from the ACC, and that's Miami at North Carolina. North Carolina is a 3.5-point favorite, but I think what makes this game so interesting is Miami is coming off that heartbreaking game from last week, and the coach, the biggest blunder of the season, could have just taken a knee, game over, chose to hand it off, fumble. But what you had then was a breakdown in the Miami defense, which was also unforgivable. I think that the issue here is how does Miami react from that kind of loss? How do they come back off that?
Unfortunately for Miami, I think North Carolina is a really, really good team. 12th ranked team in the country, 5-0, yet they're still kind of a sleeper team. Not a lot of people know too much about North Carolina, but what we do know is that Drake May, their quarterback, is going to be a high end first round pick in next year's NFL draft. And he has done everything he's supposed to have done this season. So while Miami is going to come out and try to get that taste out of their mouths from last week, I think this North Carolina team is a lot better than people realize. And I think they're going to be able to put up some points, and I don't think Miami has what it takes to take down this North Carolina team, despite them coming in super motivated for this week to try to right their wrong from last week. So, my issue with Miami is not that they lost to Georgia Tech, but that game should have never been as close as it was. So now you're going to play against a top ranked North Carolina team that I personally am very, very high on. And it's in North Carolina. I like North Carolina against the spread at home.
I like that pick also. I think earlier I talked about, that Maryland, Ohio State, and Maryland proves that they're still Maryland. You know, I think it's the same thing here with this Miami team. I don't think that they will show that kind of, whatever word you want to use, to react to a tough loss last week. I think it'll affect them in a negative way. I'm with you going Tar Heels in that game. Finally, we're going back to the Pac-12 again. Two teams that are a little bit under the radar, and that's UCLA at Oregon State. Like I said, it's a very good Pac-12 conference when you have Oregon, Washington, USC. These two teams sometimes get forgotten. What do you think of that game?
Well, I think the public perception here is that Oregon State should win this game and should cover the spread. But what people don't realize is how good UCLA's defense is. Third in stop rate in all of college football. That has flown extremely under the radar. So I think their defense is going to step up. And then I've got faith that Chip Kelly, just like I thought Lincoln Riley was going to call a great game plan against Notre Dame, I think Chip Kelly is going to have a great game plan against Oregon State and help this UCLA team go in and pull off the upset. So I think they can win this game. But more importantly, we're talking spreads. So I will take UCLA to cover this spread as well.
Very good, Shaun. Just a quick review. You have Oregon, 3-point underdog over Washington. Penn State, 41.5-point favorite over UMass. North Carolina at home against Miami. Carolina is a 3.5-point favorite. You have the Tar Heels. And finally, you have the UCLA Bruins are at Oregon State. UCLA, a 3.5-point underdog. You have taking that one. I think they're good picks this week on Redemption Week, Shaun. All right, that is it for our show. That's all we have time for. Thank you, Shaun, and thank you all for listening. Make sure you join us next time on the Keystone Kickoff Show.
Keystone Sports Network.